So who would like to comment first, or ask a question, or?
One question there.
Hi, a couple of comments about disadvantages of such a levy. Depending on if it was, know how the planning system works. If you had a levy depending on the size of the wind farm, that would be manipulated by the developers to have a small wind farm and then to make it, and then to have additional bits added further down the line. So from a practical point of view, that might be quite, there'll be ways and means that they'll want to get around that. And the other thing is, if you have a levy, does that preclude them doing post-construction monitoring for, say, collision risk analysis of birds? Would their get-out clause be, well, we've got to contribute to this levy, so we're not going to do any site-specific work?
Okay, just in relation to the second point, I think Susan was trying to make the point that, you know, research should be seen to be different from monitoring. I know that sometimes they overlap. So,
but would it be seen to be different in terms of a developer? Would they want to contribute to both? Because quite often they do habitat management plans to increase the bird population, that, you know, specifically for different birds that are there. So would they think, well, we're going to have to contribute to this levy, so we're not going to actually, you know, do anything on our site? You know, I'm just thinking of how it might work. So.
Well, it's a valid point. I think that we had a meeting about this last Thursday, just formulating some of our ideas, and that same sort of
I don't know,
idea
because we've got people from the wind industry here, so I don't know.
What would you say? Planning systems there to reduce, well, EIAs carry out to reduce your impacts, and then you do your mitigation and monitoring requirements as a result of your EIA result. This I see as being completely separate, so I don't see that process.
So there wouldn't be a conflict, you wouldn't see?
I think there'd be conflict in that. I don't think a lot of developers would be open to something like this because it would add costs. However, if you look at it from a community benefit fund, at the moment that's, you know, there is no strict rules and regulations for how that's applied. That's done on a site-by-site basis, and it depends on how it sort of goes through planning. So this is probably more akin to community benefit rather than what is required as part of the planning process and the EIA monitoring requirements, mitigation requirements rather than something like this, which is, I like the idea of this in terms of equality and you know, spreading the research requirements, because there are so many gaps in knowledge, and I do think that you can't all be scrabbling about the background trying to get funding from external bodies, and then occasionally the old wind farm developer putting in money or using results from their habitat management plans that are a requirement from planning to then further research. So it's a good idea from that perspective, but I can't imagine it be that well received across the board.
I think the Scottish Government has got
well, if I can say, I think a fundamental question that anybody's going to ask is it fair? And I think the question then is the person developing on peatland, they're using a resource which is otherwise not charged for, namely the peatlands. So I think there's a stateable case that it is fair to have a levy. There's a sort of legal technical question as to whether it will count as a tax, and landfill tax is a tax. Under the Scotland Act, tax is not a devolved matter. So, I mean, it could still be done, but it might have to have UK government agreement. It's a fine line between what's a levy or a rate and what's a tax. So there might be ways in which it could be constructed so that it could be done on a devolved basis. But as I say, that's a sort of starting point. There's a lot of practical questions.
Front row first, and then we'll...
I'm Rosie Banter from Scottish Renewables. I just wanted to say that obviously I agree with what Jane says. She obviously works more closely with projects on the environmental side of things. From my perspective, we at the moment are having a lot of things thrown at us like this from different areas, whether it be peatland restoration and paying for research, peatland, birds, forestry. we've spoken about things like this with the industry with regards to bird monitoring, because obviously there's a lot of data out there that's not being collated, and it's not really helping because everyone's collecting all this data but no one's actually analysing the data as a whole. So I think one thing that came out of that meeting that we had about funding for any further bird kind of analysis would be that something like this isn't really, the industry is not, from what I've seen anyway, firstly they would ask why renewables, why wind, why not everyone that has, you know, some kind of building on carbon, which is, I think, probably fair. The second would be, I don't think, as long as it's presented in the right way and the benefits for the industry can be shown, and what I'm saying, I don't think that the industry would necessarily think it's a bad idea straight away. They probably would agree that it's a good idea and it's needed. But I think that the first question they'd ask would be why wind, and they would definitely want to see the benefits of it. But I don't think it's something that we can automatically assume the development industry is going to say, oh no. But just to bear in mind that we are getting requests like this from many different areas, so whether or not it's going to be just a carbon, a levy on carbon, or whether it's going to be a levy which includes all different types of research.
I don't think the intention was ever that it was just going to be renewables.
Right.
But then, there is what constitutes a development is an issue. Like there's a hill farm with some sheep. Is that seen as a development? I promised.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with what Rosie's saying, because it's important that it's not just on renewables. I mean, we were mentioning open casting, and obviously that has potentially a much greater impact, at least in the short term, possibly potentially in the long term as well, than renewables. So, I mean, I don't think that wind energy shouldn't just be singled out. I was also wondering, sort of following on from Francis' comment, whether having it as a specific Scottish thing would discourage development in Scotland, and obviously that we might have, I don't know, I don't understand the politics of it, it might have some European implications potentially, and I mean it would obviously depend on the level of the levy and or tax, because obviously wind farms already have some kind of community benefit thing, so they give a certain amount of money to a fund, as do coal miners, for example. For each tonne of coal they give a certain amount to a community fund. So I mean, if it was kind of on a level with that, sort of relating to the extent, I mean, you would have to make sure that the overall burden on the developers wasn't too much, that they'd just think, oh, forget this, we'll go and go down to England and do it. But we don't have this additional burden.
I think they're all fair points, and we hope this will raise discussion. I think it's going to two more. You go first.
Those people who are bored to death by my presentation a couple of days ago, I had one of my recommendations that one of the things that's missing from the present system, the environmental impact assessment system, is constant monitoring. And if you're doing something, as I'm involved with the carbon calculator for the Scottish Government, if you introduce that as a mandatory, I mean, if it's not mandatory, if you do it, you really want to be checking 2 or 3 years down the road how effective it's been. And okay, you're not very keen to have monitoring as a form of research, but we are lacking a lot of information on, say, the impact of drains or the impact of floating roads on peatland, and you'd get that from the developers, and if that was made public, then it could be used as a research material. So I'm just saying you could introduce this without a levy, just introduce it as a compulsory thing as part of the monitoring and your commitment to the planning application you put through your EIA.
Okay. First of all,
It's going to be very much on the same lines. We've got all this stuff going into reports, so there's a wealth of material there. If we have good baseline stuff, if the baseline stuff's solid, then that's good. But going back to Peter's talk this morning, I mean, he's got a huge sites that he's playing with at Whiteley, all over the place. And some of us are giving our eye teeth to get onto them. And just as a matter of, good relation. It's not a levy, it'd be a combined thing.
it's probably a combined thing, but it's probably also a different thing. I agree with you. RFP TV, I think.
Aidan Smith, Head of Planning for RSPB Scotland. Yeah, I think as a couple of other people have mentioned, I think it'd be critically important to not be seen to be pecking on the wind industry specifically, and it was good to see they suggested a few other industries where there are potentially not negative carbon implications, and yeah, I don't think the coal industry would come out too well as soon as you start tallying up carbon emissions from development. Another thing I wanted to just mention or make people aware of is there's actually a current Scottish Government consultation called Securing the Benefits, which is due to close, I think, on the 18th of February, and this has come about really, it's really on the back of the development of offshore renewables, but it's much broader than that, and I guess it's a consultation which provides an opportunity for people to feed into Scottish Government how they feel community benefits in general might be readjusted, because the system at the moment is a bit ad hoc and a bit inconsistent across the country, as was mentioned by now.
Okay, you did have your hand up, Clifton, yeah.
Just to quickly say, as the founding author of the Wind Farm and Peat Principles, Rosie and I have discussed these for about 2 years, so I think it's taken to get to the wording that you now see. What would be sad is if the levy became the killing point for that discussion. The fact is the industry have had good experience of collectively pooling its research, its data on other issues like birds. We're used to this discussion. And I think the idea of having coordinated research and working together, pooling resources to get complementary research and long-term research is the key. And that can be done without having to be a levy. And it's that that's needed. As the principles say, it's that collaboration and coordination of the research and informing us. That's the real prize. You can achieve that through a voluntary method, as is being done with wind farms and birds, or you can do it through a levy. Don't make, and I know you didn't intend that, don't make the levy the be-all and end-all of this suggestion, because there's a bigger prize. It's getting the information gathered. And it helps the industry. That's why they signed up to the principles. It reduces conflict, it reduces public inquiry, battles, and so focus back to the research and benefits to both sides of NGOs, government and industry.
I think that's a very good point. It's just, I think probably that the levy idea is about fairness and that the cost isn't being borne by the willing.
I'm not arguing against it. It comes forward. Yep, there are huge advantages, but it's not the only focus. The focus is getting the shared information.
And do you want to follow up on that, Mark?
It's a similar kind of point. It's well, I've got both a practical issue and an academic benefit. And firstly, the practical issue, would a levy be based on the size of the development or its potential carbon disturbance? Now, the latter could be a very difficult thing to work out, but if you did it on the former, you could have a developer that was making all the efforts to not disturb the site, to do the best management practice, versus one that was behaving really, really badly, and a levy based on size and not on disturbance. The guy doing the good stuff would say, oh, I've got to pay this levy anyway, I'll just do it as cheaply as possible. So that might be an issue. The second point on a kind of academic benefit, a commonly funded research programme through something like a levy should be quite good at breaking some academic boundaries. We're held back, like in furthering this kind of work, by both the amount of information and its availability. So maybe a commonly funded research programme, we could get data, cited on as a common resource, as soon as it's available, something like a kind of virtual observatory ethos, so that it had a common platform for model testing or whatever. It was just immediately made available for the community rather than being stored away until people have got their paper done.
Good points. Sort of some of the nitty-gritty of it would obviously have to be thought through. Is there any other substantial?
Well, from my point of view, I like the list. I think that you put to start with Susan in terms of some of the things that we don't know, and I think that were very relevant. And that's the key thing, I think, if for integrating the academic community into finding solutions to this, is that it's solution driven, so that the research is there to try and find solutions, because I think the industry would be resistant to just generate a lot of data and a lot of academic interest, but actually if it doesn't actually help them find a better way of doing something, then they won't want to do that. And I think that's probably the reason why, say, the company I work for, we do research in-house, if you like, because then we're able to choose where our focus is, because then it helps us have solutions for when we do the next project. And I think the potential benefit of something that was a levy would be that if everybody had to do it, then everyone benefits, whereas at the minute we'll decide that we've got something we want to get a solution for, and we'll pay for it and we'll fund it, but then we don't really want to share it. And it's not that we don't want to share it with the academic community, it's that there's commercial capital in that. Because we might now know how to do something, you know, better than a competitor, and it's an extremely competitive industry to work in. And just a final point about, I know someone's mentioned birds, that's been mentioned a few times. I think there's been an enormous amount of money wasted monitoring birds. I think if you were to accumulate all of the money that's been spent monitoring birds on wind farms in the UK and compare that with what we actually know about the impacts on birds, I think it's extremely poor value for money. I don't know what it would be, but it would be tens of millions have been spent on birds. And I honestly think if there'd been some well set up, very, very thorough, you know, good experimental design studies on birds and wind farms at the very start, we wouldn't even be bothering to monitor anymore because we know what the effects are. And it would be a design and it would be a habitat management solution. And I think that's the problem as well with the piecemeal approach of getting different developers to do little bits, and it's all a little bit disaggregated, because I think that's what you end up with.
I agree with everything you're saying there, and I was going to just wind it up there, but I think it's only right that RSPB you may not see anything behind the pillar there.
I kind of actually agree with what Peter's saying. I mean, I wouldn't say that money had been wasted. The real lesson which would have to be learned here is getting the information and data from the monitoring available, and that's been a real challenge for us as well, because individual developers have been going off doing the monitoring work and quite understandably feel quite sort of precious about it because they paid for it and collected it and want to keep a hold of it and use it for themselves. So there's been a difficulty about making that more widely available, which we're trying to address at the moment with the industry and with the Scottish Government. So if something like this was to be set up, trying to get the information disseminated properly would be key. I do think that there maybe is an opportunity with this current consultation though at the moment to suggest the Scottish Government trying to move forward the system of community benefits to try and deliver this sort of thing might be really worthwhile, and I'm sure if there was a well thought through response it'd be quite receptive to that.
I think the point there is that community benefits shouldn't just be seen as village roofs. Community benefit could include improving your water, biodiversity and the peatland condition around you, and if we can convey some of that this is a community benefit, restoring the peatland on a winner.
And let's go back to
I totally agree with this.
Final word.
Because I mean, I might be naive, but I see renewables as a community benefit, the wider community obviously. But and I think that if we can somehow feed that into community benefit, we're actually holding a member day on the 28th of January at Prince Mason's in Glasgow. If anyone wants to come along to that, then you're welcome to put in your kind of tuppence worth, because we'll be pulling together a response on that. And I think, community, this is what we've been trying to say for such a long time now, is that community benefit isn't just giving a pile of cash to the local community, or it's about everything that the wind farm development does for the local community. So I totally agree.
Okay, that's good. I think we are all talking about a common goal and we all want to move things in the same direction. It may be that this levy is the way forward. There didn't seem to be anyone arguing against it, but there may be alternative ways of sort of fulfilling the same objective, which is what I think Clifton was saying. I think we might have a thought about how this would be moved forward by talking to some of you as individuals.
So if we kind of write up what we understood people have said and distribute it to everyone to look at first of all, would that be acceptable to people? Okay. And then a quick question, Clifton, is this likely to come up, this kind of discussion likely to come up in your Stirling meeting in the summer? Because it's about financing peatlands and I'm not sure what that...
Yes, it's a good thing. Whether we'll have a speaking slot or whether we could bring it into discussion, but it's very much about funding the ongoing. Yeah.
Okay, so
Think about that.
discussions of funding aspects associated
relevant.
with peatlands are not likely to be going away soon if IUCN is thinking of discussing this. Does anyone object if a video is put on the CLAD website? Would you like to see it first of all before you decide it? Because it could be of interest to people to see what discussion was made, but I wouldn't want anyone to feel uncomfortable with it. Okay, if you're not sure, can you get in touch with Simon and let him know first of all, and he can let you have a look at it, because he can edit it. Yeah, okay. Right, so
I think I can see the troops are massing at the back for this afternoon's meeting, so we're going to pull this AGM to a close. Susan, you would just like to say a few words?
first of all, thank you all very much for coming.